have spent a lot of time over the last 30 years of my professional life working with people in the foreign policy bureaucracies of the United States government, including the Intelligence Committee. And there is an absolute phobia about religion as a source of human conduct in the State Department, the Defense Department, and the intelligence community, even after 9/11. I wrote a little book 4 or 5 years ago called Faith, Reason, and the War Against Jihadism, which was an attempt to explain some of the religious roots of Islamic extremism. And I was hearing from friends at the CIA that people are reading your book over here with plain brown covers. Now, if these are the guys that are supposed to be figuring out what's coming next, and you can't publicly be seen to be pondering the religious sources of what might be coming next, we've got a problem. We've got a very real problem. So, we are not anywhere near the state of religious hollowness that you find in most of Western Europe and increasingly parts of Central and Eastern Europe. But there are lots of nervous-making signals. There are lots of signals making for nervousness in our own society. One of which I should say is the attempt by, again, the present administration to redefine religious freedom as freedom of worship, period. In the State Department lexicon for the past 3 years, the Secretary of State and others no longer talk about religious freedom. They simply talk about freedom of worship. Well, religious freedom certainly includes freedom of worship, but it's not limited to freedom of worship. If religious freedom were simply freedom of worship, then religious freedom simply declares that certain people can do certain recreational things when they feel like it in private. It's a kind of privacy. Well, this makes no sense in terms of any understanding of religious conviction, which always has public convictions. And yet this is what the present administration insists on trying to forward around the world. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, if you see the direction of the courts in these church versus state cases going towards a sort of freedom from religion in the public life, what makes you so convinced that we're going to win the battle in the courts over the HHS?
Because of the specific character of the issue. And the most recent Supreme Court religion decision, which was handed down in January, it was called Hosanna Tabor versus Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. The administration's EEOC had tried to overturn what has been called for, I think, about 100 years now, the ministerial exception to most equal employment law, which is that churches have a set-aside so that churches can hire their personnel according to their standards. And the Obama administration challenged this and lost 9-0 on the Supreme Court. With the administration's own 2 justices, Justice Sotomayor and Justice Kagan, voting as part of that 9-0 thing, and treating the Solicitor General, who was arguing the administration's very weak case, as if the Solicitor General were a chicken that was laying square eggs in the Supreme Court bill. Now, that decision was handed down that way because of something that was passed in 1992 originally, I think. No, actually, I think it was 93 or 94, called the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. And that is the legal framework in which we are going to appeal, in which the suits against the HHS mandate will be filed. We arguably have a very good free exercise case too, as a pure matter of constitutional law, but as a matter of the relevant statute, which is the RFRA, it's referred to, the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, it's a slam dunk. There's no way they can justify this in terms of that. And Hosanna Tabor helps one see that that's the case. Now, we might not get 9-0. My colleague, Ed Whalen, who was a former Supreme Court clerk, who writes daily about the federal judiciary, does think it's going to be 9-0. I mean, he thinks this is just, this is open and shut. We'll see, but I think that's why this is not like praying at football games. This is a different, which is ridiculous. This is a different deal. And I think we're on very strong ground. Yes.
In the past, when there's been such, I'd say, religious dissent, particularly with this moral relativism that's going on, where truth is kind of seen as bigotry or seen as racism against abortion, against same-sex marriage. Oftentimes in the past, when similar dissent has occurred, there's been an increase in religious. The fact that there's so few religious vocations, do you foresee a future, I'd say, boom in religious vocations, particularly from American society? Because right now it seems as if there's a great deal of vocations coming overseas, particularly from Africa, but I haven't really seen the numbers, so I'm not really sure.
Well, the question is there going to be a boom in religious vocations? The answer is, it depends. In the dioceses that have taken vocation recruitment very seriously, particularly in terms of vocations to the priesthood, there is a boom. Mundelein Seminary, which serves the Midwest out of Chicago, is as full as it has ever been. Mount St. Mary's up in Emmitsburg is completely full. There is no room at Mount St. Mary's. North American College in Rome is fuller than it has been since 1964. And these are young men from all over the country. This has not been taken as seriously as it should have been taken here in Baltimore until now Cardinal O'Brien got here and tried to rev this up a bit. The next Archbishop is going to have to work at this very hard. But the general experience around the country is when the local bishop and his priests make this a priority, the response is generous. In terms of women's religious communities, that is as simple as it gets. The religious sisters who look like sisters and live like sisters and pray like sisters are growing, and the rest are dying. And that's a settled pattern. So, like the Nashville Dominicans and Mount DeSales here in Catonsville, boom. Had to build a new wing on their novitiate in Nashville. I'm sure that was the influence of Father Rock in the Nashville area for many years that helped advance that. Alma, Sisters of Mercy of Alma, Michigan, boom. But the groups which have opted for a much more secular mode of life are not going to make it. And that seems to be about the way it's going. Yes, ma'am.
I'm just curious what your thoughts might be, if you have any thoughts on why President Obama
The question is, what is the president, who's some background in constitutional law, think he's doing with the mandate? Well, first of all, let's not overstress the background.
Well, that's what you hear, and that's why
I know several of his teachers at the Harvard Law School who would not want to press that too hard. I think this is very simple. I think it's the equivalent of the Keystone Pipeline decision, which was a way to get the environmental activist groups, which are a major funding source for the National Democratic Party, in line for November. The HHS mandate, aside from the fact that these people really believe in this, I mean, they are statists at heart. But so, okay, so why not wait till next year? Why cause a fuss right now? I think it's because they know the power of the Planned Parenthood, let's put it, the sexual revolution lobby. And that's big money too. That's one of the four major funding sources of the Democratic Party. As the environmentalists are another, and the public service workers unions are a third, and the trial lawyers, the tort lawyers, are a fourth. I think this was an election year signal to a very, from his point of view, important source of money for the campaign. Now, I also think you have some really hardcore ideologues in the White House and at HHS who would have been pressing this in any event. But I think, whereas you would imagine that the normal tendency would be to want to put off a fuss-making issue until the second term, I think the money thing is a big deal. And in that sense, I mean, if you want a description of the battle here in the U.S., the HHS mandate, in which I've just lost 2 months of my life. I mean, this is all I've been writing about for 2 months and whatnot. But I have to say that the Komen incident was even more revelatory. I mean, here is this Susan G. Komen Foundation, which is as whistle clean as anything in the country. Everybody loves the Run for the Cure and all of this. It's a great cause, never been any fuss. They say to Planned Parenthood, whose annual budget is $1 billion, we're not going to give you 600,000, 0.6%, because you're not spending the money we give you on the things we give it to you for, namely mammograms, genuine preventive medicine. And what does Planned Parenthood do? In 72 hours, 3 days, they call down the hounds of hell on Komen. I mean, I have never seen anything move as quickly as that. Media, government, everybody is pounding on these people who were totally unprepared for this, had no idea what was going on, and had no response to it. And so they said, okay, leave us alone. That's the intensity of the feeling on, if I may say, the other side. So if you're going to get engaged in these things, you know, get the armor on, because this is heavy duty stuff.